Namaste, everybody. Good evening. I am Mrs. Sujata Gokhale, your moderator for today's session. A warm welcome to all the participants of today's session, to Mr. Abgaji, the GCC coordinator of Science India Forum, our team at SIFQatar, and founders, Mr. Shashidharan and Mr. Satish. Today's webinar topic, How Human Are We? Our Microbiome and Nutrition, will be explained by Dr. Rashmi Kulkarni, who is a molecular biologist with a passion for nutrition. Welcome, Dr. Rashmi Kulkarni, to the webinar. We are pleased to have with us as our chief guest, Dr. Arvind Ranade, a scientist from Vigyan Prasar, Department of Technology, Government of India. Welcome, Dr. Ranade. Dear teachers, as I said before, please rename your Zoom meeting details with your first name and school name while joining the meeting. Please note there will be a question and answer session after the presentation by the speaker. We expect all participants to follow some online session etiquettes and ground rules. Please post all your questions in the chat box and avoid using the chat box for sharing pleasantries. This will only help us to collate your questions on the topic to be put forward to our speaker in the question and answer session. Please turn your speaker to mute while the session is ongoing. You will be advised to unmute to raise the question during the question and answer session. Please view the screen in the gallery view. All participating teachers are requested to submit feedback through the Google form already shared through email and also available on the chat box. We will be posting it once more on the chat box, so you can access it through the chat box. This is mandatory to confirm your attendance as well. Once the session is over, please take time out to complete the feedback form today itself. E-certificates of participation will be emailed within a week to attending teachers. Now I request our SIFQatar President, Mr. Deepak Dahake, to introduce our speakers for the day. Over to you, Deepak ji.
Dignitaries, guest speaker, principals, HODs, teacher, and everyone who joined us through SIFQatar YouTube channel. Good evening to you all. This is 10th online program Science India Forum is conducting during COVID lockdown period. Science India Forum has its presence in all GCC countries, and we are conducting various science-related educational activities for the students and teachers' empowerment. Today, we have with us Sri Shashidharan ji, a founder member of Science India Forum Qatar, and Sri Abgaji, SIF GCC coordinator, who are guiding and supporting us in fulfilling the mission objectives of Science India Forum. It is a great honor to have with us Dr. Arvind Ranade ji to grace the occasion as a chief guest. Dr. Arvind Ranade is a scientist working for astronomy and space science communication and popularization in Vigyan Prasar, Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. Presently, he looks after the Networks of Science Club VIPNet program of Vigyan Prasar. He is the convener of national level talent search examination called Vidyarthi Vigyan Manthan. He is also actively involved in organizing India International Science Festival. We are grateful to Vigyan Prasar and Department of Science and Technology for their full support in various activities. Thank you, Arvind ji, for accepting our invitation, and we warmly welcome you. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all for the today's special training program on nutrition. We think that we know everything about nutrition, but we are carrying many misconceptions about nutrition. Current COVID-19 pandemic has changed lifestyle and normal routine. Today's topic, in that sense, become more relevant to understand us the impact of good nutrition on physical and mental health. I feel privileged to have with us an expert in nutrition as a guest speaker, Dr. Rashmi Kulkarni. She did bachelor and masters in microbiology from Mumbai University and PhD in molecular genetics from the Ohio State University. She worked in the field of developmental biology, evolution, breast cancer, and lung cancer. She worked in the field of various nutrition science. And with this experience, she developed her passion and interest in the science of nutrition, and more specifically, the interaction of microorganisms that live in our body with the food we eat and how it affects our health, well being, and behavior. With today's topic, let me give a brief idea about microbiome. Our microbiome is a collection of microorganisms that reside on and inside our body. The microbiome makes up a vast majority of cell count and proportionally is the key to our well-being physically as well as mentally. Just like our fingerprint is unique, so is our microbiome. Dr. Rashmi has worked as a researcher in this field. She also a passionate trainer and her goal is to help everyone become their best selves by imparting nutrition microbiome training. She loves cooking and making healthy food interesting for children. She will be empowering you in teaching children how to think about food choices and helping them to make the right and healthy food choices. On behalf of Science India Forum and all participants, I once again welcome guest speaker Dr. Rashmi Kulkarni. Thank you everyone for attending this session. Over to our moderator, Sujata
Thank
ji.
you, Deepak ji. Now I request our GCC coordinator, Mr. Abgaji, to say a few words. Abgaji, over to you.
Okay, Namaste all. So, Science India Forum is an organization working for the development of our nation through the intervention of science and technology. So, Science India Forum has its chapters all over the GCC countries, to be precise 18 chapters. And we are taking constant help from the largest science movement in India, the National Science Movement in India, headed by Dr. Vijay Bhatkar, the father of current 10,000 computer. So we also closely associated with the Department of Science and Technology, Department of Earth Science, Ministry of External Affairs, etc. So in the Qatar also, we have eminent personality came forward to contribute their time for the development of society through the through various activities of science and technology. So under the leadership of Deepak ji and other Sujata ji, Ganapati Suji ji, and all the other people. So I would like to congratulate all of you to taking this massive effort, and I also wishing all the best to the participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Abgaji. Now I request our distinguished chief guest to address the gathering. Dr. Ranade ji, over to you. Dr. Ranade ji, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good evening and namaskar to everyone. Most respected and founder member of Science India Forum Qatar, Dr. Shashidharan, the president of Science India Forum Qatar, Dr. Deepak Dhakeji, Shri Abgaji, SIF GCC coordinator, Dr. Sujata Gokhale, Shri Sridharji, and all other eminent members of an organizing team of a special lecture series coordinated and organized by Science India Forum Qatar. All the students, parents, and various school principals across the Qatar and the schools and the people of Qatar. This is a great occasion for me to be, grace this event wherein the today's talk, which is the 10th in the series, delivered by Dr. Rashmi Kulkarni ji. I think this is more important and pertinent topic selected by the organizers, and I'm pretty sure that today's talk will not only enlighten us about the diet, the nutrition that we need to have, but also about the entire, uh, the fact about how we all should be careful in situation like this. And we all are aware that the COVID-19 has made everyone to learn so many new things, especially right from the education sector to everything that we could think of. And today's particular event will help us in realizing each and every aspect of nutrition, as well as how our body is made up of, and how are we need to be careful in each and every aspect of it. I had been to Qatar quite a couple of times, and I have seen the kind of enthusiasm, kind of interest, kind of the people, students, everybody is interested to learn the science. And it feels so great to know that Science India Forum, Qatar, the whole team of SIF is really always try to make that each and every intellectual come onto the platform and deliver the talk, not only to enlighten about the knowledge, but to learn how the science is helping for the life of everybody, especially with the help of science and technologies of today. We in India look forward to have more and more association with Science India Forum for each and every aspect of science, and in each and every aspect of the society, those who are working for the science and technology at all the GCC part, all the countries which are associated, especially through the Science India Forum. Today, I really feel an honor to be part of this program, and I wish that today's talk will help us in many ways. And I also wish that SIF Kata will continue the series in days to come. Thank you so much for inviting me to grace this occasion, and I will also learn a lot over the Dr. Rashmi Kulkarni's talk of today. With this, I wish a great success to SIF Kata and all the parents and students and teachers who are listening to this for the great time ahead. With this, thank you so much. Namaskar.
Thank you, Dr. Ranade, for your kind and motivating words. Thank you for making time out from your busy schedule to attend this session and for your valuable thoughts. I will now hand over the podium to our speaker, Dr. Rashmi Kulkarni, for her presentation on how human are we, our microbiome and nutrition. Over to you, Rashmi ji.
Thank you so much, Sujata ji. Thank you so much, Science India Forum and Dr. Ranade for attending today and for giving me this wonderful opportunity. So it's a topic that I'm very, very passionate about, and I'm hoping that I can make a difference in everybody's lives by at least changing some of the views that everyone has about how we live and how we look at nutrition. So without taking much more time, I'll just start with the presentation. If I can get permission to share my screen.
Abka ji or
Yes, it is done. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Thank you, thank you.
I can share. Thank you. Okay, I hope everybody can see it.
Yes, yes, thank you, Rashmi. Yeah, we can see. Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to start with, introducing ourselves as to how human are we. We think of ourselves as human beings, and we are very proud of what we are and what we can achieve. So just this topic will be about what we really are. So it will focus on our microbiome and about nutrition and how these two interact together. So it will be in different parts. Firstly, I will be focusing on the microbiome, then on nutrition, and in between, I will be talking about how these two factors interact to make us who we really are. So this is a very commonly spoken or very commonly read sentence that we see all the time. We are what we eat. But the truth is that we are, guess how much human we are. I just want to have a small poll here. What do people think? How human are we? Okay, very interesting results here, if everyone can see them. So it's right from 100% to less than 25%, with the majority saying 50 to 74%. We are only 10% human. Shocking, isn't it? This is how we actually look like. If we were to look at ourselves through a microscope, we are filled outside and inside with trillions of microorganisms. And they in turn make us who we really are. So the microorganisms that are on our bodies and inside our bodies are referred to as a microbiome. So what is a microbiome? It is a collection of bacteria, protozoa, fungi, and viruses. And the collective genetic material of all of these is called the microbiome. So these are the microorganisms that live on and inside the human body. And you might think that they are very small, they are much smaller than the human cells. So this is, if we look at the size of the human cell, bacterial cells or viral cells are much, much smaller. But why do they matter so much? Because our cells are much bigger. They matter because in humans we have about 1 trillion cells. The microorganisms are 10 times more than we are. And the reason it matters is, even though their size is much smaller, is because if we look at this, there are 10 to 100 trillion microorganisms on each person's body. Most of these are inside the gut or the digestive system. So there are 10 times as many microorganisms as there are cells in a human body. There are more than 10,000 different types of microorganisms that already have been identified associated with the human body. In humans, if we look at ourselves, we only have around 22 to 23,000 genes which make up our genetic material. So if we look at the differences between different human beings, we are very similar. The difference is only 0.1%. So what makes us really different? It's the genes in our microbiome. They outnumber our genome by 100 to 1. There are 100 times more genes that belong to the microbiome. There are 3.3 million non-redundant genes. That means they are totally different if you take all of them collectively. Completely different genes in our body that are not ours. And these are controlling what happens to us. This is what makes us very different from each other. So this is what makes us 80 to 90% similar only. This is not our genetic material that matters the most. Up to 90% of all diseases can be traced to the microbiome. This is how we really are. These are the visible organs, along with the invisible microorganisms, make up the complete human being. So where does the microbiome come from? What is the source? The microbiome really comes from the mother, where even before birth, when the baby is in the mother's womb, which is supposed to be sterile, the mother's microorganisms from the intestine are always interacting with the baby, unborn baby. The products, that the chemicals that they make, are traveling through the placenta and are interacting with the unborn baby, and they help in development of the baby. during birth. So it depends on how the baby is born. If the birth is vaginal, the baby gets all the microorganisms from the mother. If it's by C-section, the babies do not get those microorganisms. If the baby is breastfed, again, it gets microorganisms from the mother, as well as antibodies from the mother. And this really helps seed the early microbiome in a baby. And this in turn helps with the development of the immune system. So it is shaped by the environment which we live in, the kind of birth that the baby had, the diet, and of course, genetics, what genes we have. All of these interact together to shape a person's microbiome. The microbiome of all the organs and all parts of the body have been sequenced. And this is just an example to show a pie chart of how many different kinds of microorganisms we have on different parts of the body, on our body and inside. So our microbiome is like a unique fingerprint. This is completely different between individuals, even from the same family. And this is as unique as a fingerprint. The microbiome evolves as we age. So if the unborn does not have any microbiome, in the baby, you can see that these are the microorganisms. These are the names of the microorganisms. They are completely different in breastfed versus formula fed. And it changes when the babies start eating solid food. In toddlers who have had antibiotics, have a different microbiome than ones who have not. Malnourished children have a different microbiome. It changes through adulthood, and healthy and obese have completely different microorganisms, very different microorganisms, in fact. And again, aging changes this diversity as well. So what do these microbes do if they are so important? It turns out that they do everything that is related to our health and well-being, from metabolism to maintenance of the nervous system, other things such as drug metabolism and how drugs are metabolized in our body, to development of different tissues and organs, to the immune system function. They also decide when we feel full after we eat. They produce a majority of, they produce very important vitamins like B12 and vitamin K, which we cannot make on our own. So the microbiome is constantly evolving, and there are very different types of bacteria or viruses or microorganisms that are found during each of these stages. And this depends on the exposure that we get right from birth throughout our lifetime. The exposure of the environment, the hormones, the gender specific hormones, everything, and the food we eat, all of these influence uh, what kind of microbiome we have. Another thing that is very interesting is that the circadian rhythm of the gut microbiome. So what this means is the sleep-wake cycle. So just like our brain knows that it's daytime by looking at the level of light, because there's a body clock that we inherit, that we have. So it turns out that the gut microbiomes are responsible for setting this clock. In animals that do not have, that are free of microorganisms, do not have an internal body clock. So this is a very important recent finding. Even the number of bacteria and the number of different kinds of microorganisms, they are different during the daytime and the nighttime. So what do they do? These microbiota, or the microorganisms, they make metabolites or chemicals, and these interact with our body, and we show a phenotype. So what does phenotype mean? Phenotype means anything that is observable. So it can either be very good health or a chronic disease that people suffer from, or something in between where there's chronic pain or there's just a feeling of anxiety or depression or something that's in between. So whatever it is, it's usually a function of microbial metabolites. So how this functions is that if we look at the gut microbiome, so in the gut or the digestive system, majority of the microorganisms reside. And this is where most of our immune cells are. Our immune system, 70 to 80% of the immune system is in our gut. So there is a huge amount of interaction between the microbes and our immune system constantly. If we look at the intestinal cells, so this is the intestinal lining. This in the unborn baby does not have any interaction with any microorganisms. But during birth, the baby is inoculated or seeded with microorganisms from the mother and antibodies from the mother. And this in turn keeps increasing throughout life. So this is the time when these microorganisms are teaching our immune system to distinguish between what friends are and which ones are pathogens or disease-causing microorganisms. So this is when they get the training. This exposure to microorganisms is extremely important for function of our immune system. So if our immune system is trained very well by these microorganisms, the pathogens obviously have a hard time setting up colony and it is difficult for them to infect. So if we look at this scale here, this just shows that if the microorganisms are symbionts means some that help us. I mean, we are helping them and they are helping us. It's a mutualistic situation. So if the number of pathogenic microorganisms increase and symbionts decrease, that causes disease. So this can happen due to various factors, either endogenous or exogenous. So it can be the genetic makeup of a person, how the immune status is, what other diseases that person has. It can be the climate, occupation, too much hygiene, diet, stress, and a sedentary lifestyle. So when this happens, when this balance is disturbed, the microbiota services are disturbed as well. So this is in terms of good health when you have everything in balance. But when this is out of balance, there's an increase of inflammation, there's an increase of calorie storage, and everything is completely disturbed. The tissue development is reduced, gut motility is reduced. The production of short chain fatty acids, which are very important for our brain, are reduced. And all of these can cause disease. So if we only look at this small example, scientists here studied microorganisms only from the oral cavity, ignoring everything else. So when they studied these microorganisms, they found that in Alzheimer's disease, there is a change in these microorganisms. In case of periodontitis, there's a change in a different set of microorganisms. So if you look at all of these diseases, there are these specific microorganisms that are changed, and they have not even looked at what's happening in the entire body yet. This is just the oral cavity. So the microbiome is affecting all of our organs, and this is just a very small representation of the kind of diseases that can occur when the microbiome is disturbed. Just a fun fact that the dirtiest surfaces inside people's homes are not what most people think, and they are not the ones that people clean the most. So, for example, cell phones, remotes, kitchen sinks, purse handles, coffee pots, kitchen knobs, pet bowls, toothbrush holders, and there are 200 times more fecal bacteria or stool bacteria on an average cutting board where raw meat is cut than there is on a toilet seat. The dirtiest part inside our homes is the kitchen sponge. These are not the things that people think about cleaning the most. Instead, what most people do is they are using surface disinfectants. So this is the hygiene hypothesis. I'll get to that why it's very important. There's an indiscriminate use of antibiotics these days. which again have a severe effect on the microbiota. There's antibacterial hand wash, antibacterial body washes, antimicrobial toothpaste, which have triclosan, antimicrobial wipes, hand sanitizer, antimicrobial floor cleaners. We are just trying to get rid of all the microorganisms in our lives. So just one disclaimer, this is in normal situations, not in the COVID era. So if we think about what we are actually doing, we are getting rid of sources of our microbiome by doing this. So what is the reaction on the microbiome if we do that? And people also drink almost sterile water. It's bottled or RO water or UV treated water because they think that's healthy. But what is actually happening? So I put out these sentences from a website by Dr. Belkade and Seger because I thought this was extremely important, that humans want to eat yogurt because they think that the gut will be benefit, whereas they use hand sanitizers on their hands all the time. So any disturbance in this, the microbiome causes dysbiosis. Dysbiosis meaning it means that it's a disturbed biological system. If the microbiota is sick, the host will be sick as well. So these profound changes in the human microbiota may contribute to increase in chronic inflammatory and autoimmune diseases. So I use that to just describe what happens these days in all the urban or high income populations. So what happens in this hygiene hypothesis is that we are living in a very clean environment. It's too clean for us to have a normal life. So what happens because of that is that in combination with stress and drugs, poor diet, vitamin D deficiency leads to missing microorganisms. And this in turn leads to a leaky gut where the gut barrier is disturbed and the microbial products are leaking into our bloodstream. Pathogenic microorganisms are leaking in our bloodstream. This causes many, many different types of diseases. Some examples of autoimmune diseases that are caused by a microbiome disturbance. So specific microorganisms have been sequenced for these. Lupus, which is a very painful autoimmune disease, multiple sclerosis, Sjogren's syndrome, the metabolic syndrome, which includes obesity and diabetes, autism, Crohn's disease. Scientists have described very specific changes in microbiota in all of these disorders. Even in cancer, a disturbance in the microbiome in the gut can have profound changes in the development of cancer. And not just development, it also affects how people respond to cancer treatment. And let's talk about the obesity epidemic, which has taken over the world in the past few decades. So where the number of obese people is increasing dramatically over time. What has caused this? So when scientists looked at the CAOL index, which is the diversity of or the different kinds of microorganisms that are present in obese adolescents or normal weight adolescents, and the same study was done in adults, what they found was that the diversity of the microbiome was very high in normal weight individuals as compared to the obese individuals, where the diversity was much lesser. And the types of microorganisms that they found in obese versus normal weight adolescents were very, very different. So what are these doing? So it looks like the metabolites produced by these are interacting in some way with our body. Several studies have highlighted the importance of the gut microbiota, especially because that's the largest part in how the disease develops. When some researchers looked at lean or normal weight people who are non-diabetic, they found that they have a normal, very diverse microbiome. When they studied the microbiome in obese but non-diabetic, they found that the microbiome has changed significantly. It's called a dysbiotic microbiome. And when they looked at obese and diabetic individuals who have type 2 diabetes, they found that there is also similar dysbiotic microbiome in these individuals. When they studied the blood samples from all of these, they could find signatures of very different microbial products in the blood of these individuals. So by looking at the microbial products in these individuals, they were able to tell whether they were lean, obese, or diabetic and obese. So what scientists have started doing recently, this is a very old method that was used. The earliest was probably in the 4th century. It's called fecal microbiota transfer, or FMT. What is done here is the stool sample from a healthy donor is taken and introduced either duodenally or by colonoscopy in individuals who are affected by any disease. So what that does is that replaces replenishes the microbiota in these individuals. And if we look at, for example, an obese and a lean person, it increases the diversity of the microorganisms and it changes the phenotype from obese to lean. So this has been tested for many disorders, and there's a lot of very interesting work going on. So what researchers have done is they have taken FMT or fecal microbiota from lean donors and have transferred those into obese patients with a metabolic syndrome or diabetes, and they have shown that it improves insulin sensitivity. So they are able to replenish their microbiota and change their status from obese diabetic to lean non-diabetic. Similarly, for cancer, there's a lot of research that's going on. So it's work in progress. What researchers have shown is that the gut microbiome affects how people respond to cancer therapy. Different people have different responses because they have a completely different microbiome. So now they are focusing on how to restore this so that people can respond to it in a better way. What they are doing is that people who respond to cancer therapy are used as donors of the fecal matter. Fecal matter from responders is transferred to these cancer patients. And what they have seen is this is non-responder and this is responder. They have seen a huge difference in the size of the tumors with the same cancer treatment. They have seen a huge difference in the immune response. There's a much higher immune response when they are transplanted with the responder microbiota. This is very interesting work that has been done. Another very important thing that the microbiome does is it controls the working of our mind. So the gut feelings that we have are true. There is indeed something called gut feelings. Our bodies actually think twice because we have two brains. Our brain only weighs 1.4 kilos. The gut microbiome weighs a lot more than that. That is the second brain that influences our mood and well-being. The feelings of disgust, fear, joy, anger, sadness. A huge part of our emotions is shaped by the nervous system in our gut. So scientists have sequenced what is called as the psychobiome. The psychobiome sounds like a scary term, but these are psychiatric disorders like schizophrenia, autism, neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, depression, anxiety, and even addiction disorders. So when they have sequenced this gut microbiome from from people who suffer from these disorders, they have found that there is a very different signature of the gut microbiota in these. And when microorganisms from these people were transferred to germ-free mice, they also started suffering from the same disease. This is an example. This is from a normal human when the gut microbiota were transferred to mice that did not have any germs. They were normal. But when gut microbiota from a schizophrenic person were transferred to a germ-free mice, these mice showed symptoms, signs of schizophrenia-like behavior. So these disorders are actually transferable by using just the microbiome. So I can go on and on about the kind of disorders that we can see, or the effects on our health and well-being that we can see just by looking at the microbiome. But I will focus on the other part, which is nutrition. So previously, I mentioned that in this current lifestyle, which is urban, we are reducing the microbial load by using a lot of disinfectants on all kinds of surfaces, which reduces our exposure to the microorganisms. There's hardly any outdoor interaction. A lot of deliveries or a lot of births happen by cesarean because the doctors insist on that. And a lot of babies are fed formulas for convenience. There are doctors prescribe antibiotics indiscriminately. And of course, the diet is a completely different story. So this changes a lot of things when we compare to that of the rural lifestyle. In the urban lifestyle, there's a very highly people consume highly processed foods. It's a Western diet which has very, very low complexity of the food. It is very low in fiber, high fat, high carb, very high amounts of animal protein. Water is treated. We use all kinds of antimicrobial products. And the schedule is not dependent on the body clock because everything is available 24/7. The lifestyle is sedentary and again, constant use of antimicrobial products, which is the complete opposite of what a rural lifestyle or how people were living previously, which has zero processed foods, extremely complex plant material, which are very, very high in fiber, low in fat, very less animal protein, bathing in the river without soap, following the natural body clock, intense physical activity, and use of only natural products. So when we talk about nutrition, we all know that this is the food pyramid. Just for fun, this is from the Association of American Corporations for Freedom of Choice of Food. This is how a food pyramid would look like for a person who wants freedom of choice. When we go back to the food pyramid, one problem that I constantly see is that in schools, at home, everywhere, we are taught about the food pyramid, how important it is, and how we should focus on getting all of these in our diet every day. So what I want to share is what people think they are doing and what they're actually doing. That when they say we are eating very healthy food, this is what they are actually eating. White bread, white pasta, white bread, white rice. This is the food that has complex carbohydrates, a very high amount of fiber, and these are whole grains. So this is the ideal kind of diet when we look at carbohydrates. What's the problem with the refined flour or white grains, white flour? When we look at a whole grain, this is the part that has fiber. It is filled with vitamins and minerals. And the germ has, again, more vitamins. But when you process this to a refined grain, it has none of these. It has gluten and carbohydrates. So what you are eating here is just carbohydrates without the fiber. When we look at fruits and vegetables, people's idea about eating fruits and vegetables is veggie smoothies or fruit juices, fried vegetables, overcooked vegetables, when it should actually be raw fruit, some raw vegetables, lightly cooked or steamed vegetables in an ideal situation. This is the same when we look at dairy and fish. fried fish, milk products that have an excess of sugar and that are highly processed, when it should actually look like natural yogurt or plain milk, a lot of fermented cheese, fish that is cooked optimally. It's the same when we look at meat products. It's very highly processed meats, chicken nuggets that are given to children for convenience. These processed meats are linked to a variety of cancers, when ideally it should be a very different kind of minimal cooking or processing. When we look at fats and sugars, cakes, pastries, candies, fried food, again, when it should be healthy oils, nuts, seeds, natural sugars. And there's a huge misconception about sugar that, oh, we are not eating any sugar, but sugar is just the tip of the iceberg. All the carbohydrates that we consume are actually sugars. They are broken down into sugars. So when we consume all of these refined flours, that is white bread or pasta, they do not have any fiber. We are actually consuming sugars when we are eating all of these. When we think about, oh, I only had a coffee this morning, a real coffee looks like this, which only has coffee and water. But this is what actually happens. And there is, guess how much sugar? 73 grams in this drink, when the daily recommendation is 30 grams for adults for the whole day. These are the popular cereals that children and adults have for breakfast in the morning, first thing in the morning. So we are looking at a daily recommendation of sugar at 30 grams for adults. This is where it is. And children are consuming this every day. And I had to have a special mention of Nutella because I have seen a lot of children consuming this. This is how it actually looks like. This is the sugar content. This is the hazelnut content. And it is advertised as an example of tasty yet balanced breakfast. This is what fools people. They don't read this, that the first ingredient is sugar. This is what they read. Other sources of hidden sugars, if you look at sodas and other drinks, you can see that they all have way over the daily recommendation, total recommendation of sugar. And children are drinking these quite regularly these days. Another misconception about not eating sugar is people are drinking fruit juice and giving it to children. But what fruit juice is mostly sugar. What is shown here is not what goes in one glass of this juice. You would need a lot more to make one glass. It's the same. So it has about 3 teaspoons of sugar. When you look at orange juice, 1 glass of orange juice, you would need maybe 4 or 5 oranges to make this. So just look at how much sugar each of the juice, the so-called healthy drinks, have. So which is better? If we look at a medium orange, 1 glass of orange juice, 1 orange soda, or a diet soda, just if we look at only the amount of sugar in these, it's amazing how different it is. This is diet soda, which has artificial sweeteners. So the amount of fiber in an orange is much higher than any of these. Vitamins might be the same. You feel full when you eat an orange. You may or may not feel full with any of these. And what happens in our body is when we eat these, the fiber in it makes sure that the sugar is released in a very slow and controlled manner, which is very healthy for our body. But when we drink any of these, there's a rapid blood sugar increase, and it drops as rapidly as it increases, which is not at all healthy for the body and not healthy for the microorganisms. Artificial sweeteners is a completely different story. They interact in a different way with the microorganisms. And when you look at any of these labels, they will not say that it has added sugar because they come from fruits. So what happens when we are eating these whole fruits or vegetables versus drinking fruit juice or overcooked or processed food? When we look at whole food, the food is interacting and is being digested, it's swallowed, it's chewed, and it's interacting with the microbiome throughout the digestive system. But when we have any of these processed food, it is going directly doing only harm along the way. Just a cartoon to reflect for a moment as to what we are doing. These are the names of sugar that are hidden sugar, because most people do not know that these are also sugar. If we don't see this written on any of the labels, we think that, oh, this does not have sugar, but there are so many other forms, like very commonly seen high fructose corn syrup. And it is as addictive as cocaine. And it has been scientifically proven that sugar is as addictive as cocaine. You keep eating more and more, and the body craves for more. Artificial sweeteners are a different story, because they can change our microbiome, and they can also cause a lot of other health effects. And they're not as good as people think. A diet soda is also equally bad just because of this reason. There's another issue with processed foods. These are not actually foods. They should be called food stuff, because they have no nutritional value. And it's a lot of, lot of children are snacking on these all the time. So what happens when we are eating things like this, Western diet or junk food? So this is a normal intestinal mucosa. This is the mucus layer, and these are the microorganisms. Even on 1 to 3 days of a Western lifestyle, you start seeing changes in these microorganisms. After 3 to 7 days, the mucus layer starts disappearing. It is required to protect the intestinal cells. After 5 to 8 days, the microorganisms are very, very changed. And the microorganisms, when they were sequenced, when the genetic material was sequenced, scientists have seen differences in the kinds of microorganisms in a Western diet versus in a rural diet. So this is what a healthy diet would look like, and a Western diet, obviously. There are diet-specific microbiomes. So if you have a high fiber diet, the organisms are totally different from that of a high protein diet, high carbohydrate diet, or a high fat diet. And they in turn affect the health by making these metabolites. And people having a different diet have a completely different health status. I thought this was very important that Segata et al. Said in one of their papers, is that just like we care about the extinction of animal species in our ecosystem, we should care about the extinction of the gut microbiome that is being depleted in the Western world. And unraveling these dynamics together with the investigation of these effects is extremely important, because we have co-evolved with our microorganisms much before this industrialization happened. So that is something that we have to give a lot of importance to. So what I showed here is that if you have a healthy microbiome, if you start with a healthy microbiome and you give it bad nutrition, the interaction cannot be good. There will be some effects on health. But if somebody is starting with a microbiome that's poor, combined with poor nutrition, the interaction can be really, it could have disastrous consequences on health. So what we should focus on is a good start to the microbiome, good nutrition to have very good health. So who controls what we eat? We all know what healthy food is, but can we control what we eat? No, we cannot, because our brain makes up only 10%. We are only 10%. So who is really controlling is the microorganisms in our body. And they tell us, give us what we want to eat. So we have to make sure that it's a healthy microbiome. There are, of course, these external influences like commercials. There's so much spent on food advertising in the United States and elsewhere, and only so much, 1.2 billion on public health. If it was the other way around, we wouldn't have so many health issues. And people, there are some schools that think that, I've seen one school in Qatar who had clowns from McDonald's to welcome children in kindergarten, handing out balloons from McDonald's. So if there are influences like this, and children are seeing this all the time, that they have access to junk food 24/7, it is very hard for them to make the right choices. Another very common thing, which might sound familiar, is distracted eating. This is how children are eating most of these days, glued to their iPads or the phone. They don't know what they are eating. They don't know how much they are eating. They are not interacting with their food. It is the same with adults. Very recently, there's this YouTube influencer. So now little children as small as 3 and 4 to 14 have started becoming influencers. And they have these YouTube videos where they are playing with toys from different fast food joints. And this is influencing a lot of children when they're watching these YouTube videos. Most parents would not know that, but this is a very important source of influence for young children. And how marketing is done in grocery shops. The children's products are kept at a level where they can be easily seen by the children. So that's how they are influenced. There's nothing happy about a Happy Meal because there's nothing healthy about it. And I'm not singling out McDonald's, but it's the same about other food joints. They give out toys and things like that so that the children will want more and more and more. And if you want to know whether this is really healthy, I would suggest buying one of these burgers and keeping them maybe for a month. You won't even see mold growing on it because of the preservatives in it. So are food labels tricking us? Yes, of course they are. When we eat yogurt, this is not a really healthy form of yogurt because it has a lot of sugar and a lot of other chemicals that we don't need. So it's a good idea to check the labels. This is fruit punch, which has corn syrup and no real fruit. And there are some other labels that people should make a habit of reading before. That is one good habit to have. So what can we do about it? Because we have all of these influences in our life and we can't seem to control because our mind is actually only 10%. What can we do? What we can do is mindful eating without being distracted, more traditional eating, listen to the body clock, eat when it is time to eat, pay attention to food labels, and parents and teachers can really help to teach by example by doing this themselves so that children see that this is the healthy way of living. And of course, all changes are not easy to make. So small incremental changes in our lives are much easier to make, and we will definitely see the effects. Exposure to diverse outdoor environments like playing in the mud and water bodies outside is great for the microbiome, as well as physical activity and exercise. We have always heard that we should eat the rainbow. This is how the rainbow used to look like. It's Halloween today, and this is how the rainbow looks like these days. Let's bring back the rainbow. Let's teach our children what it really means to eat the rainbow and why it's important so that we get all the nutrients that our body requires to keep ourselves happy. There are these advances in medicine. That was what we can do. But what scientists are doing is that they're discovering new ways of changing the microbiome by diet, by using prebiotics, by microorganisms, by synbiotics, which is a mixture of all of these, and a variety of other techniques. One of them is the fecal microbial transfer. So there are these wonderful advances that have been used, and they are very, very exciting. But all this will continue to happen, but we can do what is in our hands, which is to improve our microbiome. Microbial life is very different when people are living completely indoors and when they spend a lot of time outdoors. So is it time to start redesigning our spaces for our microbiome so that we can interact with them a lot more? This is how children's play areas look like these days, when they should actually be playing outdoors and get their hands dirty. This is the healthiest way of getting a good microbial start. For all the teachers out there, just one slide where the teacher is taking attendance. Thank you so much for spending your weekend evening with me. So the teacher is taking attendance here. The teacher is asking, is Jill Waters here? And is Jill Waters microbiota here? And all of our microbes are saying yes. So thank you so much for listening. And mask up, follow distancing, and stay safe. I'll take any questions if anybody wants to ask anything. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Rashmi ji, for your interesting and informative session. I recently read, a small article on how the microbiota had changed in kids who were playing. In urban schools, they don't have these playgrounds. But when they were asked to plant trees and, promote tree planting, they found that the kids' microbiota had changed, and therefore the immune system as well. So that was one information I had read, and I recollected it now. Thank you very much again. We have our question and answer session for our teachers. My colleague at SIFQatar, Mrs. Suji Ganapati, has put together the questions. If you have put your questions in the chat box, she will take them on, and we will present it to the speaker for for the answers. Yes, Suji, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sujata. Before the teachers, I'll give them time to put on. I have one question to you, Rashmi ji.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, how do I figure out whether any health condition is because of the disturbances of the microbiome in me?
There is a lot of information about different health conditions and the microbiome out there already. There is a lot of research that is being done. If anybody wants to know specifically, either their doctors can tell, but unfortunately many of the doctors are not aware of what the microbiome does. So there are many different forums for that, and there are many companies that are sequencing the microbiome, and they figure out whether your health condition is because of that. So even that can be done. If anybody wants specific information, I can provide that.
Sure. Thank you. And if we have the damage already done through the lifestyle, what you have all mentioned, is it reversible with all the guidelines what you have given us?
It depends on how much damage has been done and if there are any chronic conditions. But of course, you can change your lifestyle, and incremental changes will make changes in the microbiome. It takes time. So one has to be very patient. In case of chronic health conditions, what scientists have seen is that transferring fecal microbiome from a normal person to people who are affected helps a lot in changing the microbiome instantly. So changing our lifestyle is not going to help instantly, but it will accumulate over time. So depending on how severe the health condition is. we can decide what course to follow.
Yeah. Okay. On behalf of the teachers, I'm a teacher and I cannot influence what the school policies are. How can I help that? How can I mean, you have some suggestions on it?
Okay, so what I have seen is that I can totally understand that everybody wants to help, but the school is providing lunch or having policies or whatever is convenient to the entire community. So the school lunch will have white bread, it will have white pasta, it will have things that are not healthy for the children, and they will advertise it as healthy food. But what we can do at our level is at least teach people who are immediately in contact, teach the classroom that you are uh, heading. And it can be taught by example, it can be taught by showing videos as to what exactly happens when you eat any food versus the other. And it can be done on a local level, even though you cannot influence the entire school. So start small.
Okay. One teacher has raised this one, Sanjay Atwale.
Yes,
So
good
can
evening,
you
ma'am.
please unmute yourself and ask?
Yeah, good evening, ma'am.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, ma'am. I would like to just know about how do I reset my microbiome, ma'am?
You can, I mean, everybody's body is completely different and we react very different to what we eat. So if we eat high fiber food, some people will be totally fine with it, some cannot tolerate it at all. So we have to start slow and introduce foods that are healthy and make this change slowly, because not everyone can suddenly change everything. It will be a shock to the microbiome as well. So by increasing exercise, physical activity, and slowly changing the diet, definitely the effects of that will be felt. The immediate effects on mood and general well-being will be felt soon after making these changes.
Yeah, I think now we
Nice,
have
ma'am.
reached
Thank
the
you.
time limit. Thank you so much. Thank you. Over to Sujata.
Thank you, Mrs. Suji. I now request Dr. Ranade to give to give his closing remarks, please. Dr. Ranade?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Indeed, it was really a wonderful talk, and what I could just say, in fact, if Rashmi ji is ready to answer this question as well. Well, in the situation like most of us, which are either live in a cosmopolitan city or the city which are often highly been influenced with the what we call it as in supermarkets or the things which we hardly get a chance to get in the natural food. Now, as you correctly mentioned, and having even a RO water is also that way restricting all of us to have a microbiome which is essentially required. I mean, somehow, it appears that what kind of lifestyle that we are in one on the one side, that we are bound to be in such kind of a cities, need to be in a close association with the supermarkets, and we really understand, being a scientific person as well, that what are all the dangers which are there in front of us. So in such situations, I would only request Rashmiji to enlighten us, if at all, just to summarize, that in such tough situation, especially even in Doha, large majority of people are very in close vicinity of supermarkets, where natural things certainly that comes to our supermarket, what we call vegetables or something, and we ourselves knows that yeah, this is going to be a very tough time. We do not know how many what kind of fertilizers are being used, what kind of dangers are in front of us. In such situation, what is the minimum thing that we can do in such situation, that what are all the something which are very very in one way we can say that we should at least avoid these things. Even now it becomes a fashion. If you do not have an RO in your home, you will be considered what kind of water that you are drinking. And if you do not even get let us say maybe it a social constraint or whatever, that to do not go into the supermarkets, then you consider, oh, what kind of food you are eating, right? You correctly said, yeah, these are all the something that we really need to. But can you just give us a, let us say, the tangible 4 or 5 points that even in such situation, at least to feel ourselves, happy that okay, even in this tough time of being in cosmopolitan cities or a city of high, populations and so much of pollution, things. What are all the things that one could have or feel good when we really work in such kind of a situation? And then I think that will give us a closing, I would say, the ideas that in terms of the talk that you delivered. And no doubt it was immensely full of knowledge, information. At the same time, I mean, the people who like me felt like, oh, what need to be done when I live in such a city like a Delhi, or you people in a Doha. So can you highlight, give some kind of a few lines on those, that okay, even in such situation we are safe and fine?
Thank you, Renji, for the wonderful questions. And I can completely relate to those because in our house in New Bombay, we did not have this RO water or whatever. We were just drinking tap water. As long as it's not causing any disease, it's fine. But people were not drinking water in our house whenever we had visitors because they didn't think it was palatable. I mean, completely relate to that. But what people don't see is that, I mean, I see people constantly wiping all the surfaces, cleaning the floor with disinfectant, making sure that everything that's given to a baby is sterile. We need those microorganisms. Why are we sterilizing everything? I don't know. Because we never sterilized anything for our children. They are
Yeah.
fine. They are exposed to all microorganisms, and we never treated the water, we never boiled, because I mean, that is the only way their immune system can develop. So we have to be very mindful of what products we are using. I mean, this is not relevant at all in the pandemic. When the pandemic is going on, of course, you need to follow that hygiene. But when we buy produce, for example, like if we buy fruits or vegetables, one very interesting thing one nurse told me one day is that how would you select a vegetable or a fruit? So everybody said that, oh, whichever looks nice, shiny, pretty. She said, no, I will choose the one that has insects on it. If insects feel safe eating it, I think it doesn't have that many pesticides. And I thought, I never thought of it that way, that it's true. It has microorganisms. Insects feel it's safe to eat. They are still alive. That means it's safe for us as well. So that's a completely different way of looking at how we choose food, because all the fruits that we buy, like apples from the US, they are polished with wax, and everybody likes just looking at it. But we are eating all that wax. So, and for children, I mean, all the manicured, cleaned areas, they can play in the mud outside. They can do a lot of gardening. And same here, when you do gardening, it's you are getting all of those microorganisms. You are getting that exposure, and it's also very therapeutic for the brain. It has both of these effects. So people should spend a lot more time outdoors and try to have different interactions with other people. So, you know, some studies have shown that geriatric people or elderly who are in the elderly homes, the care, the house, the whatever, the hospices, have a very different microbiota than those that live in community dwellings with other people, because they have all this interaction all the time. They are much healthier just because of that. So that is very important, and we never think about any of these. That we think that no, we should live in a very clean, very sterile, very whatever. If food falls down, we are not going to eat it. So we have to be free from all of those restrictions, because that's not what is causing harm to you. It's something else. This microbiome is forming a protective layer on and inside our bodies. If we don't give it a chance to do that, of course we will have health issues.
Great. Very nicely summarized. And in fact, that is where I also remember perhaps the generation, especially those above 40, 45, we at our, part of life in the initial days, perhaps we, really got exposed to what you actually, felt. So in fact, when we come from such kind of a, let us say, city or towns where we all were free to move around, go into the fields, and we hardly, your parents are also bothered a lot. But the present, the way that we look at the new generation, I consider the such talks will really help them to realize that what are we, looking at the as an so-called the hygiene, full of hygiene and all kind of things. But we are at the same time really need to think about the way that we are trying to protect the young generation. And I hope similar the talk that you gave will open up the mind of the common people that how they should be while bringing up the child in their home, and to what extent they should worry for them. And I think it was a wonderful talk that you gave, and everybody now really will think in a different way. And in fact it was really necessary. So when somebody like you who speaks about this, I hope the whole message will go in a right way. And we really thank for a wonderful session that you had and made us realize. Thank you so much, and over to Sujata ji.
Thank you, Dr. Ranade. There is one ad that comes to mind now. Daag achhe hain. I can see those kids playing in the mud and sloshing in the rainwater. That's nice. I now request Dr. Sharma to render the vote of thanks.
Thank
Dr.
you,
Sharma, over to
Sujata ji.
you. Yeah.
Thank you, Sujata ji. Honorable distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, once again, good evening to all. I deem it a great honor and privilege to propose a formal vote of thanks on behalf of Science India Forum Qatar. We are extremely honored and thankful to have Dr. Arvind Ranade, scientist from Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, Coordinator Vidyarthi Gyan Manthan, for his gracious presence in today's event. I would like to thank him for his ever available support towards the vision of Science India Forum in Qatar. We are grateful to have Dr. Rashmi P. Kulkarni today as our main speaker. Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable time to educate us about the health and nutrition and microbial aspect of our body. It was an enriching and enlightening experience to learn about how much human we are. Also, that body cycle, immune system, and autoimmune system. Our mobile phones are dirtier than our washrooms, and the gut feeling is real, not a hypothetical philosophy. And what kind of food we should consume, like traditional eating or our modern food system, and more outdoor activities for kids. Bring back to rainbow, interacting with dirt or mud is good for health. Thank you, ma'am, for all what we learned today. I'm sure that teachers will educate this new generation about all these points. We are delighted to have the enthusiastic educators, principals, and teachers present here under one umbrella. We express our appreciation and gratitude for your valuable presence, and we look forward for your contribution in enriching young minds. Our heartfelt thanks are also due to Sri Abgaji, Organizing Secretary Science India Forum Middle East countries. At this moment, I wish to acknowledge the persistent effort of our President, Sri Deepak Dahakeji, towards taking Science India Forum a notch up. His dedication and hard work need a special mention. We are immensely grateful for him. This event had been not complete without thanking the two stalwarts, Sri Sashidharan ji, founder member of SIFQatar, and Sri Sadish ji, coordinator of Science India Forum Qatar, for their unconditional, constant support and motivation to achieve the new milestone for us. Every event is not just a one-man show. It takes a lot of collaboration and teamwork to make the event successful. I believe this is the right moment to express my special thanks to all our volunteering team members who extend their continuous support with utmost professionalism and dedication. Thank